Okay, good morning, everybody. I have always been fascinated by the juncture of history and halacha. Very often things happen which impact the halacha, and it's always been very interesting to see how our poskim deal with issues that come up over the course of centuries. One of these issues, which has been dealt with in great detail, was the Ethiopian Jewish community, which was pretty much cut off from the rest of the Jewish world for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, perhaps even thousands of years, depending on which tradition you are willing to follow. Israel brought almost all of the Ethiopian Jews to Israel in a number of major moves: Operation Moses, Operation Solomon, some secret negotiations took place. Millions of dollars were spent to the various governments to get them out over a period of time. It's a separate, fascinating discussion all by itself. But who are these people, these Jews from Ethiopia, and what is their status? They were cut off from the rest of the Jewish world. Those that remained observant had traditions that dated back to Shlomo HaMelech, to the first temple, and their minhagim and their halachic practices and their shechita, even their bris milah, was perhaps a little bit different than what is normally accepted by halachic standards today. Where do they fit in to the normative Jewish community? So the first thing we have to do is to figure out who they are. There are a number of traditions about the Ethiopian Jews. One tradition is that Shlomo HaMelech married Queen Makeda of Sheba, possibly from the north of Aksum, and they had a son, Menelik, who visited his father, Shlomo, in Yerushalayim. Shlomo then sent him back to Ethiopia with his firstborn sons, and that's where the Ethiopian Jews came from. That's one tradition. Another tradition is that the Ethiopian Jews come from Shevet Dan, who left Eretz Yisrael after the split from the northern kingdom under Yeravam in the 10th century BCE. And after the exile of the 10 tribes by Sancherim, many of them, many more people than Shevet Dan settled in Ethiopia, and that's tradition number two, that the Ethiopian Jews are descendants from Shevet Dan. Others hold that they might be descended from Egyptian Jews who emigrated to Ethiopia between the 7th and 2nd century, 7th century BCE to 2nd century CE, over a period of time. Others, still, minority opinion, claim that the Ethiopian Jews are descendants of Yemenite Jews who emigrated to Ethiopia because of civil wars that were going on. The first thing we have to do is to make a distinction. Not all Ethiopian Jews are the same. They may look the same, but they're not the same. The traditional Ethiopian Jewish community is known as Beta Yisrael. The Beta Yisrael Ethiopian Jews cling to their Jewish traditions. They have minhagim that are very different than our minhagim. Their practices, they don't have a Torah Shebaal Peh that we have. They have a different Torah Shebaal Peh that dates back to Shlomo HaMelech's time. And some of their practices are a little bit strange, a little bit different. For example, one of the accusations leveled against the Ethiopian Jews was that they were Karaites, because on Shabbos, they also didn't go out of their houses. Ish mi Pesach Beso B'Yom HaShabbos, they didn't go out of their homes either. In every other area, they were halachic, but in this particular thing, they did what the Karaites did. So that was another problem. But the Beit HaYisrael community is a traditionally observant Jewish community. Again, they have their religious leaders, they have their Sefer Torah written in a different type of a script. They have many, many different traditions that date back to the pre-Talmudic period. They are less of an issue, according to many authorities, in terms of their status as Jews. There's another group known as the Falash Mura, and this is the problematic issue. The Falash Mura, or as they call Falashes, the Falash Mura, a technical term, Falash Mura were a group of Ethiopian Jews who were forced to convert to Christianity. And over a period of time, there were plagues, serious plagues, and killed many people. But the Christian missionaries, in addition to plagues and the lack of food, the Christian missionaries would only feed those who were Christians. So many Jews who were starving converted. And then when it was no longer dangerous, they reversed themselves, so to speak. They no longer observed Christianity. They came back to the Jewish roots. Halakhically, that's a question. If somebody converts, granted he's still a Jew, Yisrael Afa Pi Shachato Yisrael who, but he's considered a sinning Jew. Do we accept him back? Does he have to go through some type of a minimal conversion? And because there was so much intermingling, the poskim differ as to how do we deal with this issue. Beit HaYisrael is less of a problem, but the Falash Mura were a serious problem. People who are, I guess if you are in my age group, you remember growing up with the famous King Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, who was known as the Lion of Judah, who traced his lineage back to Shlomo HaMelech. And he seemed to have been a good guy, but he wasn't Jewish. But again, the traditions that they were cut off from the civilized world for so long that when they finally came to Israel, their Judaism was not recognizable, shall I say. Now, throughout history, people have occasionally noted the existence of this group. Travelers, Jewish travelers throughout the world mentioned the Ethiopian Jews. Binyamin of Tudela, Eldad Hadani, as early as the 9th century, talks about this. And again, he relates them to Shevet Dan. Ovadia Bibur Tenoro in the 15th century traveled and he met Ethiopian Jews. He says, Re'isi, I saw them in Egypt. Apparently, the Ethiopian Jews that he met were not as dark as the Africans. And he says, and there are Mehem Shomrim Torah Sakaroim. Some of their observances are similar to the Karaites or Torah Sarabonim, and he goes on to explain them. Menashe ben Israel of Amsterdam saw them. A lot of different people throughout history. Interestingly, in the mid-19th century, and this is where the major problems come from. In the mid-19th century, you had groups that were sent to Africa to convert the savages, so to speak, to Christianity. And it's called the London Society for Promoting Christianity Among the Jews, specifically. And there was a Jewish convert to Christianity, Henry Aaron Stern, who targeted the Beit HaYisrael, the Ethiopian Jews. And that caused a big problem because many of them were starving because of famines and plagues. and they would only feed those who converted. So this was a big issue. The British chief rabbi, Rav Nosson Adler, tried to set up an organization to save the Ethiopian community, but it was not successful. A lot of Rabbanim imploring the Jewish people to save the Ethiopian community. Shimshon Raphael Hirsch's son-in-law, Yosef Guggenheimer, wrote about it. The Malbim encouraged a mitzvah mission to rescue the Jews of Ethiopia. So they were aware of this serious plight. And the plague and the drought and the famine killed up to 2/3 of the Beit HaYisrael community in Ethiopia. The question arose early in the 19th and 20th century as to the Jewish status once we met these Jews, but they were very different. First of all, they looked different. Their practices were different. And Rav Kook was joined by about 40 other Rabbanim proclaiming that they were indeed Jewish, which made a very important thing. Starting in 1954, they started bringing them to Israel. Yitzchak ben Tzvi, president of Israel, had asked Haile Selassie to permit some Ethiopian Jews to emigrate. And a number of poskim wrote tshuvos as to their status. Basically, because of so many sfeikos, so many doubts, they were considered Jews. However, if they were going to marry a non-Ethiopian, then they had to undergo a minimal conversion. And if they were circumcised, they didn't have to go through circumcision again, but they had to go to mikveh, and they had to appear before a bezdin. And again, there were some Rabbanim who rejected them completely, but there were some who said among themselves they're fine, but if they want to marry outside their group, they have to undergo this minimum conversion. And this is pretty much the status today. And I should mention parenthetically that Israel paid hundreds of millions of dollars to ransom these Jews, because Pidyon Shvuyim is basically what it was. They were being held for ransom. The Ethiopian rulers did not allow them to come out, and they paid millions and millions of dollars. Many of them resisted conversion, but many did convert, who married outside the Ethiopian community. The other question is an issue of mamzerus, in terms of whether they were Christians or not, or if their marriages were valid. A lot of halakhic, there are many poskim who dealt with this. Rav Goren dealt with it, Avadia Yosef dealt with it, Rav Herschel Schechter and Rav Soloveitchik deal with it from a lumdisha perspective about sfek, a double doubt whether their conversion is necessary, whether they're really Jewish or not. It's a lot of halakhic issues here. And also the question of the 10 tribes. If they are in fact descended from the 10 tribes, does not affect their status in terms of marrying into the Jewish community. A lot of halakhic discussions here. I don't want to go into in detail because that would take much too long. I just wanted to quote a couple of interesting things. Rav Avadia Yosef's psak is a normative psak. Not everybody agrees with him, that the Beit HaYisrael were completely Jewish and did not require any conversion. However, because there was some dispute, l'chumra, they require a gerus. Again, the problem was not so much the Beit HaYisrael, but the falashmura. And how do you distinguish between one Ethiopian and another to know whether they came from Beit HaYisrael, which is more traditional, or the falashmura, which had converted? It's not a simple issue. Yes. The falashmura converted to Christianity in order to eat during the famine. They wouldn't get fed unless they converted. So they converted. Many of the Beit Yisrael didn't convert. A group of Ethiopian Jews converted, and then after the family was over, they went back to their Jewish roots. So the question is, do they have to undergo a conversion again once they've left the fold, so to speak? Yeah. All right, so
does he have to undergo?
So this is an interesting question. A non-Ethiopian converts and then changes his mind and comes back. So this question, of course, has been raised many, many times. Normatively, we would say he doesn't require any conversion, strictly speaking. He does not. Because there were too many issues causing doubt upon their status, put it that way. If they're married another Christian, there are questions of mamzerus. It becomes very complicated. Oh, okay, good. So before I get to Mendy's question, let me answer. In terms of the anusim, Maranos is not a nice word to use. The anusim, the crypto Jews. Ephraim Kannervogel, Teaneck, wrote a whole book on those Jews who were forced to convert to Islam or Christianity during the Crusades at different periods of time, and they came back. How do we accept them back? Like the Rambam, for example, in the Yemenite community said, you were forced to convert to Islam. You didn't mean it. Welcome back, open arms. Fine. In the Christian countries, they weren't so, when they converted to Christianity, they were forced to convert, and they came back. Some people said you had to go to mikveh. Some people said they had to get makos. Some people said they had to get whipped. I mean, he wrote a whole book on this, different reactions to people who converted and then wanted to come back. Normatively, we say you can't convert out of Judaism. If you're a Jew, you remain a Jew no matter what happens. If you adopt certain non-Jewish practices and change your mind to come back, you come back. Do you make you go to mikveh just as symbolically? Some might require that. But in the case of, there were too many doubts concerning the status of the Ethiopian Jews that the normative practice is within your own community, fine. But if you marry outside the community, you have to go through a nominal conversion. Yes.
When he was not Jewish, I don't remember this, he always had a pull towards Judaism. Anyway, when he finally came to convert, this is right after Spain, he found out the generation after generation after generation, I think that's about 10 generations, they only had women as being born from the original Jewish.
Right.
Yeah, so I think when it came in, the converted to family, his name Saint Marino. Remember, there's the whole thing.
Chris Marino.
Chris Marino, right. No, it was a Chris Marino.
No?
That was another guy.
Okay.
Saint Marino. Then when they finally came to convert, they traced back his lineage. And he was the first boy that was born after the 10th generation.
First male. Okay, again, well, that's a difference. I mean, the people who live in Central America and Mexico, who go down to their basements on Friday night and light candles without knowing why they do it, descendants of Marranos for hundreds and hundreds of years, they are Christians. There's no doubt about it. And they would require a complete conversion. Yes. Rav Goren Rav Goren did not accept the psak of Yosef, and he required the Beit Yisrael to undergo a conversion to avoid issues of yuchsin. What all the poskim talked about, that this was a complete issue of Pidyon Shvuyim, that we had to rescue these people. And more than that, I mean, Rav Moshe Feinstein, he says, not only must we save them, this goes back a number of years, but he was very unhappy about the racism that they suffered in Israel. After all, black Jews were not that common. He was not so much concerned about the issues of mamzerus, but he was concerned about the lack of a strong chazaka about their Jewish status. He required total gerus conversion, but he says, but once they've converted, he says there's an extra halachic obligation of v'ahavtem es hager, specifically for Ethiopian Jews, which was a fascinating tshuva. Interesting, before I get to Abe's question, in a fascinating research piece, Dr. Karen Bacon, our neighbor here, she wrote about the fact that through genetic testing, they proved that some of the members of the Ethiopian Jewish community were originally non-Jewish because of the intermarriage rates, and therefore the remarriages were not halachic marriages, and because of this svek, of this double doubt, a conversion process had to take place if they're going to marry other Jews in Israel. So genetically, scientifically, she wrote a whole piece on that. You got a question?
But statistically, you know, thousands of people, just like Dr. Bacon pointed out, there's got to be marital assimilation, and you're going to dilute the Jewish maternal lineage undoubtedly.
Yeah.
It should be a no-brainer
it's a fascinating history, because the traditions that they brought with them, they lived in total isolation, not only from the rest of the world, but certainly from the rest of the Jewish world for thousands of years. And
Rabbi,
it's just a fascinating thing. And now they become pretty much assimilated into Israeli society. But some of the older members of it, and what they call their kes, their priests, not too many of them left anymore, carried on traditions that go all the way back to Bayis Rishon. Yes.
how many are there today? Do we know?
A couple 100,000.
Right.
There are
It'd be
close to,
interesting. It'd be interesting once they hit 2-3 million, you know, and they're not such a minority anymore, what their standing would be.
yeah, well, I don't know if it'll, because they're marrying into the general Israeli population. So I don't know if that dilutes their Ethiopian heritage or not, to a certain extent. But it's a fascinating story of history. It's a fascinating story of halacha, because it's been dealt with over the centuries by different poskim as to what their status is. Are they considered Jews? Are they not considered Jews? And can you intermarry with them? And is their marriage considered a legitimate marriage? Because their marriage rituals are not the same as our marriage rituals. They do have bris. It's very similar to our bris. The issue of mamzerus, because if the marriage doesn't conform to our halachic standards, then their children might be considered mamzer. It's a very thorny issue. And again, if they marry among themselves, it's less of an issue. If they marry into the general Israeli population, then there are halachic concerns, which is why whether we accept them or not, we require a halachic conversion process, at least nominally, to allow them to marry into the Jewish population. But they have proven themselves to be very, very positive influences in the Jewish community. They serve in the army. They're members of the general community. They work hard. And it's unfortunate that they suffered a certain amount of persecution. in Israel as well. I want you, racism, I should say, not persecution, but racism because they're black. And unfortunately, that exists in certain people's minds. Pretty much the issue has been settled. There are very few, if any, left in Ethiopia anymore. Israel, as I said, spent millions of dollars literally to ransom them from the Ethiopian government. Yes.
All right, so in any town, the Ethiopian Jew wants to marry a Jewish woman, for example.
Yes.
He is required to convert.
Yes.
So that's the general rule, general law, that he would be required.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I'm sorry? Or show it, right, correct, yeah.
He said that probably prepared the Israeli population at the time. They would have integrated them without problem into society. Now they're going to become, or they have become the N-word of Israel.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
Yeah, I mean, Israel has successfully integrated a large number of Russian Jews and a large number of Ethiopian Jews. I mean, it's literally a melting pot from all over the world. And but again, racism exists, unfortunately. And when you consider that large numbers of Ethiopian Jews literally walked thousands of miles through the Sudan on foot, not all of them made it. I mean, not all the Ethiopian Jews were airlifted by Israel. Some literally walked through the Sudan to get to Israel. And because it's interesting, and the first wave, the first thing they wanted to do, bring us to Yerushalayim. We want to see the Beis HaMikdash. They had no idea that the temple didn't exist anymore because they were cut off. They lived very primitive lives, and they had no idea. It was a shock to their system when they came in. Those that were flown out had never been on an airplane before. I mean, it was a very primitive existence, but at this point, they have integrated fairly well into Israeli society. But it's a fascinating study of halacha merging with history. Yeah, Milton.
They have Shiur.
Yeah.
Do they have different levels of observance?
No, you either are observant or you're not. Most of them are pretty traditional. Again, I'm making a distinction between the Beit HaYisrael, which are the traditional observant Ethiopians, and then the Falash Mura, which caused the big problem, was the descendants of those who converted to Christianity, a large number of them.
Some of them converted, just like we have people who became from, they become so converted. Right. So some of these that converted, they may be as from, not from, something like in that sense, could be.
Could be.
Could be. Well, that's the next one. One second. We have the chief Ashkenazi, chief Sephardi. Is there such a person for the Ethiopian Rabbi?
Yeah, they don't call him Rabbi, they call him a priest. And they have their own alphabet, their own language called Giz. Their Sefer Torah is written in a different script than our Sefer Torah, and they have their own minhagim, which are, I guess, slowly dying out, but they have them. I don't know if it's structured like that, but they have religious leaders. Put it that way. Yeah. Okay.
I remember when I was in Eilat 2 years ago, I davened with many of the mostly, they were mostly Ethiopian Jews.
Right, but they have a different sitter, they have a different script. it's almost a different religion. But again, it's a religion that goes back to the time of the Bayis Rishon. Now, of course, they've adapted to modern Israeli customs and so forth and so on, so they're pretty much integrated. But the first wave that came over, it was like a whole different sect. But it's just a fascinating chapter in Jewish history. Yes. Yeah, you could call them. I mean, not really, no, because Kusim are a different group of black Jews, like Egyptians maybe. Egyptian Jews might be called Kusim, but the Ethiopians are Ethiopians, and their traditions, again, because they were so isolated, that puts them in a separate category. Hebrew. I don't know what to call them. What do they call them here? Yeah, Kush. I mean, Kushim, not Kusim, but Kushim. Kusim are different. Kush is Ethiopia. Yeah, Kushim. Moshe's wife Zipporah was an Ethiopian. And she was also black. Okay. No other questions? Have a wonderful day. It's just fascinating that Rav Moshe talks about Ve'ahavtem es hager. To him was the very important thing. He was very opposed to the racism that he saw happening to them. Yes, of course. Absolutely.
This was very touching, very beautiful.
All right.
Yeah,
Yishena Baruch Me'atov Yad Olam, B'shus Kol V'Subin Kan, V'rei Shechal Mishalo, Rosh Chal Mishalo, Tvok Hayinu, V'rovator Nemerach L'mazon Esol, V'nipnes Arach, V'hu Nosein Lech, V'kol V'sol Kilam Chasto, Uv Tuvoh. Ki hu elzon u'fanes lakol mitiv lakol michim mazon chol b'riyasov asher bara, V'rovato Adonai Hazon Es HaKol. Baruch atah Adonai al haaretz v'al hamazon. U'v'nei Yerushalayim ira kodesh meira v'yomeinu. Baruch atah Adonai b'nei barachamav Yerushalayim. Amen. Shalom b'chol tov u'mikol tov li'olam al yichasreinu.
Usually, they show where Moshe goes. There's 40 years. Usually it goes almost to Saudi Arabia. It's different direction of Saudi Arabia, not into Africa.
No, I know.
That's why when you say that, she may have been, but where did he go?
I was in Israel shortly. The first one.
Oh my God.
Friday night. All in one section. robots. One person got up.
That was their memo.
They didn't duck it because they were so rapidly.
But they have their own language, their own Shiur. Geese. That's their language. Geese.
Say it's 40 plus years ago. So we rented a home for the race.
So, did you go to any of those?
So they're making.
At some point, Greene. I don't know. It was just. Very expensive. Well, your choice is getting somewhere in the. I don't even know if there are tickets left indoors. There might not be tickets left. But you know what? Repairs phone. Beautiful. Repairs phone. And yeah, Boston Symphony was like. Was there a pool? One was there.
We don't.
I don't like it. Right. We have tickets to the show Sunday night.
Jewish situation.
Something Margaritaville.
Oh.
And it should be fun. It's a little tiny theater. So we're sitting literally 2 feet away from the actors, which is fun. And
then you got guys who were there.
yeah, it's fun. We're going to be out with speakers.
They were showing.
I like
race.
this because it's a park right at the school.
So my yeah, I'm really going away next week. Just kidding.
Well, Adina texted me at something, so I said to her, Zaydina, I'll be going by then. What do you mean by that? Dying. You're just gonna come vacation. Harm yourself.
That's so funny.
She's leaving in 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
It's inevitable.
Okay. And we'll take them, and I'm sure they're gonna go there for Pesach also.
It's called
Oh,
and they said that if you don't go home, which they recommend,
right.
you have to stay with them on campus for study and a whole.
That's so nice.
But then once, you know, it's experience. So she has one. Yes, you'll have to.
They might change them.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So, tickets together, she's a lot less.
Did she go with friends?
Him,
No, aside from him.
they don't know anybody in that program at all.
Who she dormant with then?
She doesn't know.
That's a little, They're a bunch of girls. They're gonna be, at least half of them are gonna be bitches. We can count on it.
She's very sensitive. She'll make the best of it because she's in it. So
I know, but she's not gonna see him during the week.
I think some of the programs they do
Oh,
today,
yeah?
not all, but some. She'll make the songs. Somehow she'll find somebody. Somehow she'll find somebody. Listen, where she's going. Just nervous. I'm always nervous. As nervous for Shabbos, that's very, very nervous. So you know,
Right, so there was nothing.
but no,
Excuse me, I screwed up.
Uh-oh.
Your day of learning is tomorrow, right?
Yeah,
I announced it for today, well, that's it
good
tomorrow. Yeah.
deal, it's all right.
I have so many different papers.
I think you can just announce for the week, I don't know. It's fine. She got an extra brush.
There you
Alright.
go.
I'll announce it tomorrow.
Thank
So,
The day of learning, not a week.
you.
Yeah.
we don't have to over.
So we're doing a Zoom to the yard site with my
Oh, wow.
brother left Israel last night.
Oh, wow.
So, or else we would have done it everybody in person. But I wanted to do something.
So,
Iman is coming up tomorrow afternoon, and then she's going to her brother-in-law who lives in Springfield, and the Chama's gonna come over, and Molly's gonna come over with her family, and Shani and Moshe will come over to my house at 3 o'clock.
okay,
I'm serving like,
that's Friday, right?
yeah, I'm just serving like cake and muffins. I
Okay.
baked yesterday, and fruit, and we're gonna just sit around and
It's
reminisce.
about tomorrow. I think it's very special.
Isn't that nice?
Yes, I think it's very nice.
Yeah.
Good. It's a special thing.
I remember the light. Take it out now, so I can
And
send her.
put it out. Oh, I have to put that down. I have to buy candles for Shabbos. Like Shabbos. Yeah. Got a little bit. It's a story. It's very funny. I'll tell you. Texted me. Sent me pictures of me. Oh. She says, "Do you guys are really having fun?" He says, "You're kidding. You think?" Funny. It's just very, very funny. I'm telling you, his tone is gonna start to change. We go back to school, he's gonna go into mourning. Well,
And they go back so early this year because Labor Day, so we're missing like a whole week of vacation.
but he got started earlier, I think.
My kids in Philly are starting next week already. They start the end of August. They're starting, I think, Tuesday, Wednesday. So Mitch, my son-in-law, texted me, "Can Alicia and I sleep at your house Tuesday night?" Of course you can.
Because,
He's bringing him up for a Mets game.
okay, that's nice. They play crappy. So it's a hot Virginia. He has 20
Everybody's in
shares.
Virginia this
And
year.
not Virginia Beach, just regular Virginia. That's all.
That's funny.
Doesn't make it 10 wins or loses. Who cares? He's so funny. Some of his brothers trying to get another piece for that. Staying in this, staying in a place, and who's going to take her back a place.
Why is she not well?
The father passed away 2 years ago. And they
How old?
close to us.
Oh.
He's too shy. But anyway, so and then they do that. So they just have nice. So he says, I told him to go on. He says, oh no. It's a test. Can you please call me anytime? It's still too early to.
Right.
You just haven't.
Nice. That's annoying.
It's something. They want you to get into it. So this is, so I said, "Oh, you can't take this. You coming to me anyway."
They better not bring her along.
No, they won't. Different. Together, and then make all these decisions, and then they dump it on them. And this is how they dump it on them.
That's crazy.
Well.
Wow.
You can. This is
Oh, excuse me.
So she says, I don't even know what to do in this. She's leaving it alone. This is, I can do it week by week, month by month.
Does she have to be with somebody every Shabbos?
She should leave, being alone, she's, you know, she's 80 something, 88, 86.
Okay.
She's, she has insurance, like, elder care insurance. It's just pay for your money. Because somebody will come and stay for a couple of minutes. You'll stay permanently, no choice. It's not, she's not very easy. She's very hard, very hard.
Yes, you ready?
So,
You're sitting and talking. What do you mean you're ready?
You're sitting.
No, you were standing and talking.
Yes, I was happy. I was up.
children.
Yes, children
Be
behave.
nice.
Okey dokey. See you soon.
Yes.